So Games Workshop re-released Warhammer Fantasy Battles, now renamed the Old World. Now there was an issue. It was limited in stock, and so by the time I got on there, it had sold out. So recently Games Workshop re-released Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Now they've now renamed the Old World. The problem was a lack of stock, and because of that they sold out really quickly. So with no stock left, when I finally got through to the website, I was unable to purchase an army. I couldn't even buy the rules. So then I was like, well, what could or should I do? So with no stock, I was unable to purchase an army or rule books. So what could I do? Now I could go out and purchase an alternative from a company like Mantic Games. I only had the brainwave. Could I build an army from my Mountain of Shame using the unpainted and painted miniatures I already have? Now my Mountain of Shame consists of both fantasy and historical miniatures. Now I don't have enough to paint a fantasy race other than humans. So that begs the question, what can I build? Well, I'm pretty sure I could probably build an Empire army, maybe. Brettonians, possibly at a push. Chaos Marauders, using Vikings, Saxons and various other Dark Age historicals. I can probably build an army, maybe, possibly. I'm not 100% sure. I have enough rubbish, or junk as my wife says, in my pile of shame. So let's see if I can build an army just using my pile of shame. Mountain of Shame consists of both historical and fantasy miniatures, but do I have enough to actually build a sizable force that I can use? So if I'm going to use the minis on my Mountain of Shame, then I'm limited because I don't have enough of any race other than humans, which means I can limit it down to what type of armies I can paint: Empire, Brettonian, Chaos Marauders. Now I'm pretty sure I can probably put together Empire, might be able to push Brettonian, and I know I could probably put together Chaos Marauders using Saxons, Vikings and other Dark Age miniatures. So the big question is, can I use my Mountain of Shame to build an army? Is there enough in my collection to put together a usable force to actually get playing straight away? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's delve into my Mountain of Shame. So, what's in here? Well, the first sprue we need to get rid of, and that sprue, that's 172 stuff, we don't need that. If I just drop this box down to one side. So, the first sprue I've got is Conquistadors by Wargames Atlantic. Now I'll put any company I mention, I'll put links in the description. So that's World War II, that's no good. That's Cowboys, that's no good. Cowboys again, that's no good. So here's the more the Conquistador. So as we can see, these will work really well in Empire. So I've got these. At the moment on this sprue there's only a couple. I've got quite a few sets of these sprues, and I've got some built as well. So and here you go. So we've got lots of options on here. On these sprues, and they're really good. They're from Wargames Atlantic. I think you're about 30 or 40 miniatures in a box for about £25, so they work really well. This sprue is from, let's get there, it's got a horse attached to it. This sprue is from Wargames Atlantic, and it's, let's bring that to it It's the Qing Dynasty Chinese boxers. Now these would work well if you, especially if you're doing a cafe army. Now the firearms are probably look a bit, if I can sort of get those in focus a bit. They look a bit, they're too modern. I think they're Henry Martinis. There's plenty of other options on. There's lots of swords, spears, halberdiers, and I think with this set you could probably do something like a free company, or if you're going down cafe, you could use them as you could make up spear units, sword men at arms for a cafe army. So let's see what else I've got in here. Let's get this box up. So we've got a lot of built stuff in here. So I've got things like these, which are lancettes from, I think these are Warlord Games. I think I've got enough to make a unit of these in great swords, so they work really well as great swords. We've got other sort of guys like this, which are, I could use as men at arms. Again, I think those are from Fireforge, as well as bits from, I think they've got bits on there from other sprues. Romans, very good. There are also these ones. These are from Perry's. These are 100 Years Wars or War of the Roses. These fit within the timeline for Empire. Now, if we're talking Empire, we're probably looking at, if we're talking historical miniatures, we're probably looking at sort of 14th to 16th century, sort of 1400 to 1600, in that 200-year period, the beginning of pike and shot. So you've got like the great cannons, you've got the first of the firearms of sort of, and then you've got pike, and you've still got cavalry wearing plate armour, you've still got men at arms, you've still got archers, crossbows in that period. So anything within that period of history, historical, will work as an alternative for Empire. So again, there's another person from the Lanchettes. I'm quite sure if I'm getting that correct pronunciation right, but they were the Swiss sort of mercenaries of that period, and so those will work quite well. And these are Dark Age. Let's see if we can get that. So he'll work quite well as a sort of man at arms. Militia levy or something like that, free company. There's quite a wide variety of stuff in here. That's all, no good. Like these are Celts, but they'll work as militia. If I use as a militia free company with archers, something like that. So these are more of the sort of Perry's, that period of sort of War of the Roses period. So there we go, we got another. So I'm pretty sure I can make up a unit of handgunners with these guys. These are that sort of period, sort of Lancet, Swiss of that period. They'll work perfectly well as handgunners. Another guy, great swords. Dark Age barbarian type figure. He'll work well in militia, free company. Now, free company can be sort of anything that's fairly random. They're not generally well armed or armoured. Another Lancet for great swords. So I'm quite confident making use of what I've got in my grey army that I can build some units already. Now, doing this, they're not going to be tournament. I'm not going to be able to use them in a tournament or an official tournament because obviously they're not going to be all Games Workshop models. But for me to get an Empire army on the table quite fast, I can make use of some of the historicals that I've got to make units. Now, there's no head yet, but that particular miniature is from Fireforge Games, and it's from the Mongolian box of infantry. So, yeah, there are plenty of plastics out there if you want to build a cafe Nippon themed army, and then obviously you'll have to stack them up using Empire, but that's not a massive issue. For instance, great sword, you could use samurai as a unit of great swords. Militia's militia, archers, you mean archers, and so you could use the Qing halberdiers, spearmen as state troops. The stats using for the state troops and stuff like that. So yeah, you could build using the Empire stats blocks. You could theme a cafe. I mean, there's plenty of plastics out there and miniatures and resins in order to do that. For instance, Wargames Atlantic have the boxes, Chinese boxes, which is Qing period. Like I said, you won't be able to use the Fire and the Farms, which are modern. But then you've got the Mongolians from Fireforge Games. Then you've got Samurai from Warlord. And I think Perry's do some metals and that, sort of like in Samurai period, Korean sort of that sort of era. So there's plenty of scope for you to theme an army around Cathay and Nippon, and then just use the stats for Empire. I'm pretty confident that I've got enough troops in amongst my plastics here from various. So this one here is a Perry's. Perry's do some nice medieval miniatures for 100 Years War and War of the Roses. Then their cavalry will work perfectly well for Empire cavalry, and then you could field some of these guys as foot knights or something like that. And they also do archers from the 100 Years War and men at arms, which will work well for Brettonian. So yeah, so looking at my sprues and plastics, I think I can get started on a Empire army without having to go out and buy a load of stuff and paint it up and actually get some games within the old world. And I could at a push probably do a themed one around Cathay. Now I don't have enough for any other races to build an army straight away from my Mountain of Shame, but I do have bits and pieces. For instance, I have some orcs, I have some goblins that I can use as a sort of to build around an army around those. And what I'm going to do later on in the year is build an orc army, and I probably will get a combat start. Is it called combat? It's not called combat. I don't think Mantic Games do starter sets at about £35 range for their armies. So I'm going to get maybe a couple of those to sort of kickstart my orcs and goblin forces. And I do have a few orcs already painted up, some goblins painted up, but they're more character pieces, and I have like things like some wolf riders that aren't built and painted yet from Warhammer Underworlds. I have a couple of sets, so I've got a unit of those, and then if I want to go down and get some Goblin Spider Riders or something like that, I think Wargames Atlantic do those. So there's plenty of choices out there for me to actually, without having to buy GW, if I don't want to buy GW. And likewise, I can build an Empire army from historicals quite easily. I think I've got enough to get maybe 1,000 points with sprues, built plastics that are already built here that just need painting up. They're all on round bases. I'm not sure if I'm going to debase those, put them on square bases, because you can buy movement trays for round bases, so I might just do that rather than taking them all apart. The next thing is what do I have painted? So next thing to look at is what I have painted. So if we take this particular box of painted, in here I've got a lot of samurai period. Now, like I said, I could field a army based around cafe quite easily. And when I said you could use samurai as great swords, and then up here we've got a range of stuff that could be used in there, mainly with free company militia, but there are some bits and pieces in there. There's a few Empire in there as well, but most of this would be militia. Again, there's some bits and pieces in this particular tray that I can use. For instance, this guy here is a great sword. I've got Empire Captain there. Mostly is Dark Age and Celts in this tray, but I could quite field them as militia. I've got a warrior priest up here, all painted and ready to go. So I've got these pirates which will work as militia, free company miniatures. So there's quite amongst my painted, I've got a few bits and pieces I can field quite easily, just to get an army on the table built and painted quite quickly. There's some dwarves, and I'm still waiting on my rules to arrive, so I'm not sure what allies or alliances I can use. But if I can use dwarves, I can probably make up a detachment of dwarves to use as well, if I can actually field them with the Empire Army. So as I was saying before about the Chinese boxers, these are some of them painted. Obviously you're not going to be able to use this particular individual because he's got a Mauser pistol there, but the other ones that are just armed with knives and swords and various other things will work. These will work as free company. They're armed with traditional sort of melee weapons of that sort of period. I mean, I've got some of the Perry's. That's a bit bent, that spear. Perry's painted up, and these guys work quite well as foot soldiers. So here's one of the Chinese boxes with the firearm, and like I say, the firearm is a little bit modern looking. I mean, you could probably get away with it. It's not a massive issue to create a sort of small unit of handgunners with these guys. And like what I've also got is these. I've got some of these guys, which are the duelists. I think they came out just before the end times period, and they came in a pack of 2. And here's the other. Oh, let's drop that. Here's the other guy. So these are going to be my handgunner commanders, 1 for each unit of handgunners. I'm hoping I might be able to use this guy as an Ulrich priest. It's an old citadel miniature, because of the wolf head, and he's got a hammer, so he's not but he is in full plate. I need to check the rules in that regard. Yeah, I'm pretty confident amongst painted and unpainted I can field a Empire army or an army themed around Cathay quite easily, or a combination of the two, with the stuff that I've got painted, stuff that's built and needs painting, and then stuff that's still on the sprue. And I have various metals and resins that I can sort of drop into the army as well. What I don't have are great cannons or anything like that, so these are things I'm going to have to purchase immediately in order to actually add that element of it into my army, so that I get some proper serious artillery firepower. So I'll need to pick up a couple of great cannons, maybe a mortar and a hellblaster, just to give my army some sort of punching power. I've got some mages I can chuck into units and stuff like that to sort of buff those. And then what else I need is cavalry. I don't have cavalry, so I'm going to have to purchase some cavalry. Now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to purchase those from Games Workshop or I'm going to purchase them from Perry's, but either way I do need cavalry to add that element to the army. I want pistoliers. Now, I was thinking that because they're not available from GW at the moment, I could go down the route of buying roundheads from probably Warlord Games in order to make up some pistoliers and use English Civil War roundheads. I could probably get away with them. Just have maybe use some heads from GW that I've got in a bits box to make them look more Empire, and not use the lobster helmets that were from the period of the English Civil War, because the bodies and the guns and everything else, the way hand pistols and everything else, will look close enough, and then just add some heads that are more Warhammer Empire. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I've not shown everything, but if you kind of get the gist, I think I've got enough amongst everything that I can pull together an army in order to play and get some games with in the old world. Anyway, that's all for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.